Tonight, you will wash your hands without thinking about it. Soap, water, 10 seconds. Done. But for almost the entire history of your species, that 10 seconds didn't exist. Not because your ancestors were careless, because nobody on Earth knew that hands could kill. The real answer is far stranger than they didn't know better. Your ancestors lived for roughly 200,000 years without a single person understanding that invisible organisms caused disease. No microscope had been invented, no one had seen a bacterium. And yet somehow entire tribes survived childbirth, wounds, food preparation, and burial rituals. How? The answer isn't ignorance. It's a different kind of knowledge, one built on smell, texture, and instinct instead of science. Start with disgust. You feel it every day. A whiff of spoiled milk, a slimy texture on your fingers, a dead animal on the side of the road. That reaction feels automatic, almost embarrassing, like your body overreacting to nothing. But it isn't nothing. Disgust is one of the oldest survival systems your brain has. The researcher Valerie Curtis spent decades studying disgust at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Her conclusion was simple and strange at the same time. Disgust evolved specifically to keep humans away from things that carried disease, long before anyone understood what disease actually was. You didn't need to know about bacteria. You only needed to feel repulsed by the things bacteria loved: rotting meat, bodily fluids, decaying flesh. Your ancestors avoided these instinctively, the same way you flinch from a cockroach without stopping to reason it out. That flinch was doing the job soap does for you now. So in a sense, ancient humans were washing their hands, just not with water. They were washing them with avoidance. Evidence from anthropology backs this up in surprising ways. Excavations of ancient campsites show that early humans often buried waste away from living areas. Some groups used ash, clay, or crushed plant material to scrub grease and blood from their skin after butchering animals. Not because they understood infection, because the residue felt wrong, smelled wrong, triggered that same ancient alarm. Think about that for a moment. An alarm system built by evolution, running silently in the background of every human who ever lived. Nobody programmed it. Nobody explained it. It just worked. But here's the twist. This system wasn't perfect, and its imperfections shaped human history more than you'd expect. The psychologist Mark Schaller, who researches what he calls the behavioral immune system, found that this disgust-based defense is powerful but blunt. It reacts to surface cues: smell, sliminess, visible decay. It cannot detect a pathogen that hides on a clean-looking hand after touching a sick person. It cannot warn you about a killer with no smell at all. This is exactly why childbirth was so dangerous for most of human history. Not because women were unclean, because invisible transfer of bacteria from hand to hand looked and smelled like nothing at all. There was no disgust trigger, no alarm, no reason to stop and scrub. It took until the 19th century for anyone to prove this connection scientifically. A physician named Ignaz Semmelweis worked in a Vienna maternity ward where mothers were dying at alarming rates. He noticed something the rest of his colleagues had ignored for centuries. Doctors were moving directly from autopsies to childbirth deliveries without washing their hands in between. Semmelweis ordered his staff to wash with a chlorinated solution. The death rate collapsed almost overnight. You would think this discovery would have been celebrated instantly. It wasn't. Other doctors mocked him. The idea that their own hands, which looked clean, could carry invisible death was too uncomfortable to accept. Semmelweis died in an asylum, largely dismissed by the medical community of his time. Decades later, germ theory would prove he had been right the entire time. Pause on that. For thousands of generations, humans survived using instinct and smell as their only defense. Then, for one brief period in history, science finally caught up, and people didn't believe it. Why? Because disgust feels true. It feels like proof. If something doesn't smell dangerous, your ancient brain assumes it isn't. That assumption kept your ancestors alive around obvious threats. But it also blinded entire civilizations to threats that hid in plain sight. This is the part that connects directly to you. Right now, your instinct still runs the same ancient software. You still trust your nose more than you trust invisible risk. which is why a doorknob feels perfectly safe to touch, even though it may carry more bacteria than a toilet seat. Why a phone screen pressed against your face dozens of times a day rarely crosses your mind as something to clean. Why you'll wash your hands after touching raw chicken, but not after scrolling through your phone in a public waiting room. Nothing smells wrong about any of that, so your ancient alarm system stays quiet. Modern hygiene isn't really a story about soap. It's a story about override. Humans had to learn to act against instinct, washing their hands even when nothing felt disgusting, because science revealed a danger that evolution never equipped you to sense on your own. That override took millennia to arrive. Hand washing with soap only became standard medical practice within the last 150 years. Compare that to the 200,000 years your species spent relying purely on disgust. In the timeline of human history, the 10 seconds you spend scrubbing your hands today is one of the newest habits your body has ever adopted. And yet it might be one of the most important. Public health researchers have shown that regular hand washing with soap can cut the spread of respiratory and diarrheal illness dramatically, sometimes by close to half in vulnerable populations. Not because soap smells like anything dangerous is gone, because it physically breaks apart the invisible threats your ancestors' instincts could never detect. So the next time you wash your hands, you're not just following a habit your parents taught you. You're performing an act your ancestors couldn't have imagined, using knowledge that came centuries after their instincts had already done their best. They didn't skip hand washing because they were dirty by nature. They were following the only defense system available to them, one built entirely on smell, texture, and disgust. It kept them alive against the threats they could sense. It left them exposed to the ones they couldn't. You carry that same ancient alarm system inside you right now. Every flinch at a foul smell. Every hesitation before touching something slimy. It's 200,000 years of survival wiring, still running quietly beneath the surface. Tonight, when you wash your hands without thinking about it, you won't just be following a habit. You'll be closing a gap your ancestors spent their entire existence unable to see.